Hey everyone, it's Brandy and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be doing a spoiler-free series review for the Illuminae files by Amie Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. Before I get started, I do want to apologize if you can hear my fan. It is really hot in my room and I'm not going to be able to get through this entire video without having a fan on, so hopefully that isn't too distracting in the background. I do also want to apologize for my voice. Hopefully it is good enough for you to be able to hear me. I don't know if you can tell any difference, but since last night something weird has been going on with my voice or throat, whatever, and I can't talk, or I feel like I'm not talking like normal. So yeah, I do want to apologize for that, but hopefully it is still good enough for you guys to be able to hear me, because I need to get these videos filmed so you guys can have content for this week. So like I mentioned, I will be doing a spoiler-free review of the Illuminae 5 series. So the first book is Illuminae, and then the second book is Gemini, and the third and final book of this trilogy is Obsidio. Just in case you guys didn't know, in order to keep this review spoiler-free, I am just going to kind of go into the plot of the first book and then just talk about my feelings and things like that for the other two books in the series. Starting off with the first book, which is Illuminae. Like I mentioned, this book is following Katie and Ezra, and they are living on a planet called Corinza 4. But on this planet, there's actually an illegal mining operation going on. At the very beginning of the story, the two main characters have just broken up, and I believe it's like the day after. We don't really get too many details about why they have broken up, but it is, like I mentioned, the next day after they have broken up, and their planet is invaded by this company, and they really don't know what's going on. So all of these people on this planet are trying to evacuate and trying to survive this invasion. And the two main characters end up getting away, but they end up getting split up, and they end up on two separate ships. So Ezra ends up on Alexander 78V, and Katie ends up on the science vessel Hypatia that comes to evacuate people that are living on Corinza. So we kind of follow their journey as they're trying to run and get away from these people that are pursuing them, and try to make it to the jump station so they can basically go and find help. And that is the general premise. I don't really want to get into too much more than that, because I feel like that could be really spoilery. But if you guys haven't heard, which I'm sure you have, this book, really the series in general, is told in a unique format. Not saying that this is the only time I have seen this format, but this is the only time that I have seen such detail and such different aspects of multimedia books. A lot of people show this off, but this is told in files and interviews, and we have like IMs, emails. I'm not sure if I said emails and stuff like that already, but we have sections where they're just casualty lists, which that's like 4 pages, and like pictures. And I'm trying to find something, like, it's just really different. Video surveillance files. I don't think this is necessarily the first book that, like I said, that I have read that is told in a different format, but this is the first book that I have read that has so many different types of formats, and it made the story really interesting. In this first book, we are introduced to a variety of characters, but like I said, this is mainly focusing on Katie and Ezra, but we also do get to see other people within it. Obviously, being in the situation that they were in, where there are actually, I think, 3 different ships that got away at the end after the initial attack, and they are being pursued by one of the ships that actually came in to attack this planet. So we get introduced, like I said, to a wide array of characters, and they all bring something to the story. And I would say, besides the main 2, Katie and Ezra, another character that becomes really important is Aiden, which is the AI that is on one of the ships. So we get to see this AI after there has been some damage done in this initial fight, and how the AI ends up changing from you know, just being a computer that is supposed to determine what's best, and maybe this AI is starting to develop feelings and a process of thought that it necessarily shouldn't have, just because of some risks that can be taken, which we obviously end up seeing throughout this book. So yeah, I just absolutely love this. I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars, and this is definitely one of my favorite books of all times, and it will be one that I will continue to reread. I know it's not a book for everyone, but like I said, I did enjoy it. So moving on to the second book in the trilogy, that was Gemini, and this book actually takes a different turn, because at the beginning of this, we're actually following two different characters. We are following Nick and Hannah in this book mainly. So the two of them are actually living on Jump Station Heimdall, and we find out that another team from the same company that attacked Corinza 4 has actually been sent to this jump station in order to stop the people who survived in book 1 from seeking help. So they are sent there in order to they have their own task, you know, aboard this jump station, and we basically go on a whole journey with two new characters. Now, I have mixed opinions about this one, because I had gotten so attached to the characters from the first book that when I first started this book, I kind of wasn't looking forward to it, just because I was like, I don't really want to get introduced to new characters. But I quickly changed my mind, and I really fell in love with these characters in this book as well. And this had a different take, and I don't know if I enjoyed it as much as Illuminae, just because it didn't have the same amount of shock factor, just because we kind of had some insight of what was going on in this world and why sort of things were happening the way they were. So we kind of knew that, but it was a beast all in its own, because there were more things going on. I don't think it was necessarily as creepy, I would say, as Illuminae, just because of, like I said, the shock factor, and some of the things that were happening in Illuminae were just mind-blowing, and that was mainly, or not mainly, but partly to do with Aiden, which, like I said, was one of my favorite characters. But we go through such a journey on this one, and once again, it's told in the same format, but in this book we are actually introduced to a new type of format. So the main character Hannah in this one, she actually keeps a journal, and she does a lot of drawing. So throughout this book we get those type of entries, as well as the other types of entries that we saw in the first book. So that was really nice to have a different form of media in this one. Like I mentioned before, I grew really attached to the characters from the first book, so I was really happy when they made the surviving characters from the first book made an appearance towards the end of Gemini. I was really excited about that, just because I had really missed them, and I was just like, are they going to show up again in this book, or are we just going to focus on these two characters? So I really appreciated being able to see them in this one, and I also gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. Moving on to the final book in the trilogy, which I mentioned before, was Obsidio. And going into this one, I was a little skeptical for a couple reasons. The first one being that this book is actually shorter than Gemini, and Gemini is definitely longer than Illuminae. So I was almost expecting this one to be longer, just because I felt like there was so much that needed to be wrapped up. But I can't honestly say that I felt like they did a good job. Nothing really felt rushed or unnecessarily rushed with this book, and I still wanted more but that's just because I didn't want the series to end, and I almost wish that I had took longer to read it. I probably would have finished it in a day, but I was listening to the audiobook and I was mostly reading at work, so it took me a little bit longer to get through. I was also a little skeptical about the fact that we were being introduced to two new main characters in this book, especially considering that this was supposed to be the finale. So I was a little worried about having to meet new characters, not just these two main characters, but everyone that is surrounding them, meeting them, and then like trying to get attached to them in the time that we have left, knowing that this is the only book that we really get to spend time with them. So I was a little worried about that, and also I was torn because I had gotten so attached to the main characters from the first two books that while I was reading and I was getting information about these two new characters and everyone around them, I was really wanting to get back to the other characters that had survived from the first two books and figure out what was going on with them. So this book kind of splits between the new characters and then the surviving characters from the first two books as they continue on their journey of where they need to go. So I will admit that I was a little split with that, but I felt like they did such a good job with handling it that I still ended up caring for the new characters that were introduced in this book, even though they didn't have as much time, or I didn't have as much time with them as I did with the characters from the first two books. So I really think that was well done. Also with this book, there was a lot more video surveillance footage, I noticed, than with the other two books. The first two had a lot more of the other files going on or other types of media formatting, but this one mainly focused on a lot of the surveillance footage because I felt like that was the easiest way to get across the picture. It was not necessarily more prose, but it was understandable considering what they were doing. This one I felt like had the most emotional impact on me. I cried, like I literally cried with tears falling out of my eyes at least 2 times. And then I might have teared up a few more throughout this book. My heart broke and then I was laughing and I was so happy. And I will admit that I felt like they didn't necessarily take as many risks as they could have with this ending. I felt like by this book I was expecting at least one of the main characters to die in this one, and I felt like they kind of copped out with it. And even though I had necessarily didn't like this one as much as the other two, I also have to give this one a 5 out of 5 stars because overall as a book by itself I thought it was really well done and it introduced a lot of new things and I thought this book was just amazing. So if you guys couldn't tell, I gave this series it's a 5 out of 5 star series for me. It's one of my favorite series of all time that I can think of at the moment, and it is definitely one that I will be rereading forever and one that I will recommend forever. And it's amazing, and I can't wait to see more from these two authors together. If I had to talk about my preference for them, I would definitely say I enjoyed Illuminae the most, probably in the order that they came out in. I enjoyed Illuminae the most, then Gemina, and then Obsidio. But it's weird to say that just because I definitely enjoyed some parts more than others. But yeah, I thought they were all amazing, and like I said, it's one of my favorite series of all time. Before I end this video, I did want to say that I actually did get to go to their signing, Amie Kaufman and Jay Kristoff signing when they came out to Texas for the release of Obsidio, and they actually personalized and signed all my copies. I got more than just this series signed, but I do have all copies of this book signed and personalized, and then I will insert a picture of when I met them. This has been a review of the Illuminae Files series. Like I mentioned, gave each of these a 5 out of 5 stars, and this is a 5-star series for me. If you guys have already read this and would like to discuss, please leave me comments down below, and if not and you have any questions for me, also leave that down in the comments below. But that's all I have for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys again in the next one. Bye.